matter what. And abstinence is the most important thing in the world to me. And it's great to be here on this meeting and to see everybody. So what it was like for me was, well, in the very beginning, food was my only reliable, dependable comfort. And it's also where I had fun. It's how I had fun. It's how I experienced joy and just comfort, as a little girl. And I would be just rummaging through the cupboards in my mom's kitchen and in the pantry, looking for anything sweet. One time I found a bottle of liquid sugar. One time I stumbled into my dad's box. He ran the bingo game at our church, and he had these boxes of sugar packets, and I would eat the sugar packets right out of the box, one at a time, paper and all. So I just really, like that. Nothing was more fun to me than going down to Sadie's Corner Market. She always had this penny stuff, and that's what I did. So then and that was not a problem for me, except I was known as a picky eater because every time I had my belly full of sugar, I never wanted to eat anything else. I mean, I just didn't like vegetables, didn't like anything really. So then hit puberty and I started putting on pounds, and my mom and I became dieting buddies. She was always a compulsive eater, and she always had a lot of extra fat on her body, and she always was dieting. So I started counting calories with my mom as a young girl. And, the only thing that got in the way of that, because I could lose weight, but I couldn't stand diet food. So as soon as I got to the weight I wanted to be, I would start eating the food I liked again. And then I'd gain more weight. And I was only motivated to diet when I wanted to have a boyfriend. And mostly through high school, that's what I wanted. I wanted to have a boyfriend. I wanted to be popular. I told myself, well, I didn't just tell myself, 17 magazine told me, and all the magazines told me that, the secret to being happy is to be thin. And I never had even when I was thin, I mean, I have a fruit-shaped body. And, when I gained weight, I just got to be a plumper version of that fruit. And when I lost weight, I was a smaller version of that fruit. But I never had the right size body, the kind that my friend Judy had, for instance, and my friend Lynn had. And so anyway, I just, I bought into that whole societal thing that my body was the wrong body. My body was not my friend. It was my enemy. And I had to keep it in line and starve it and treat it badly. Exercise was torture. It wasn't anything like the relationship I have now with my body. But when I was growing up, it was just awful being female. So at least it was awful being me, and I didn't talk about this to other girls. I just thought they probably didn't need to do all the things I needed to do, buy all the products and so anyway, I was like that until I got married and went and got pregnant. And when I got pregnant, I for the first time in my life, I had society's permission to gain some weight, right? Plus, you're pregnant, you're going to gain weight no matter what you do, no matter how many diets, how much diet food you eat. But I didn't have any motivation at all when I was pregnant. It's like the scale's only going to go one way. Why say no to Peggy Lawton, which if you live in the States, you might know who Peggy Lawton is. Anyway, she's a friend of Sarah Lee. So anyway, so I ate and I ate and I ate. And when I lost the baby, not lost the baby, when I had the baby, I lost the baby weight. There were 25 pounds that came off in the first weekend from the baby, but I had gained 50. And I wasn't thin to begin with. So I had this extra weight on my body that I could not lose. And I wasn't really motivated to lose because I was tired and I had this little baby and it was so hard to get out of the house. And anyway, I just resigned myself to being a woman like every other woman I knew in my family who, once they had babies, they just were heavier, and that was the way it was, and they just lived heavily ever after. And then my next door neighbor, who also had a young child, one spring day, we were out in the backyard, and I looked over the hedges and saw her, and she looked like she had lost half of her body. In a good way. She had lost half of her body weight, and I asked her how she did it, and she took me to an OA meeting where they used the Gray Sheet food plan to lose weight. And I found that if I did that and I called my food into my sponsor, didn't have to do it without exception, but I was doing it as a diet. So I did lose quite a bit of weight right away. And after 4 months, they told me I could go on maintenance, which meant that I could now be reintroduced to grains, which, we never needed a reintroduction. And once I started eating grains, I didn't want to call my sponsor anymore. I didn't go to meetings anymore. And honestly, I didn't want to stay in that fellowship anymore because I really wasn't as bad as all those people. I mean, they needed it and they were still heavy, but I lost the weight. And anyway, so for me, the whole thing about a GreySheeters desire and willingness to do this no matter what, to do this without exception, was missing my first time around using the Gray Sheet food plan. So it's very easy for me today when a newcomer wants to get the Gray Sheet and not have a sponsor, and it's very easy for me to say no. Without a sponsor, you might as well just go pick up a copy of the South Beach Diet. I mean, it really, it's not just the food plan. It's so much more than that. But anyway, so after I did that, it took me 8 or 9 years to come back around and be willing to go to the Gray Sheet meetings, which I had heard about in regular OA. I'd heard about the Gray Sheet, but when people came into those meetings and talked about weighing and measuring their food, I wanted to kill them. I just wanted to kill them because I thought they were kind of snobby and elitist, and also very sick, very, very sick. And I didn't want to admit that I needed to do that all the time without exception. I wanted to, do the moderate meal thing, which I know some people can do a moderate meal, but folks, let me tell you, when I went through the drive-through at McDonald's, even McDonald's called what I was doing going large, but not me. I was calling it a moderate meal because it fit on the tray. So anyway, this works for me. And from July 17th, 1995 until January 24th, 2015, I was abstinent without exception on the Gray Sheet. And then on that day, what happened was, and let me just tell you, in those almost 20 years, I went through all kinds of things with help, with a sponsor, with people. I got abstinent in Cambridge, Massachusetts, so there were lots of meetings I could go to back then. And I benefited from people sharing how they do this life without food, the way I was doing food. I found that when I weighed and measured my meals, and my meals actually ended, which I was a grazer, so I never experienced hunger. I just always had a little something within reach, in a drawer, under a bed, in my pocket, always something close by. And as long as I had a little something, I could keep at bay all the feelings that were just underneath the surface. But when I stopped eating that way, and when I started eating the Gray Sheet way, I had feelings, huge, huge feelings. And I didn't know what to do with them, and I was scared of my feelings. I was always scared of my feelings. I grew up in a violent home, and my dad's anger and my mom's near hysteric response to his anger just frightened the crap out of me. And so I married a passive-aggressive man the first time, and And he would just kind of slush all of his feelings onto me, and then I would eat. And we were, copacetic. I mean, we weren't happy, but we were whatever. So I'm talking fast. I always talk fast when I qualify. So I want to talk about what happened on January 24th, because thank you, 5 minutes, because on that day I was eating out with my husband, who's very supportive of the Gray Sheet food plan, doesn't understand it, but is totally supportive of me doing whatever I need to do to stay abstinent. And we went to this restaurant, which I thought I could eat abstinently at. I had eaten abstinently at before. But that was in the middle of the day, and it was in the outdoor section. This time we were inside. It was very dark. I couldn't see my scale very well. I ordered something different, and all of it was abstinent, but it didn't come all at the same time. I started eating my vegetables before I had them all weighed out and measured. I knew more was coming, and I lost track of how much I had put on my plate and what I was eating. I just lost count, and I didn't make a phone call. Now, all I had to do was make a phone call and ask somebody what to do about it and follow their directions, and I would have had unbroken abstinence, but I didn't. And so I said, basically, that's got to be good enough, F it. And it wasn't good enough. Honestly, it wasn't good enough. And I went to bed, and even my husband looked at me and said, really? You can do that? I'm like, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, it's fine. And I woke up the next day, and I called my food into my sponsor, didn't reach her. And it wasn't until an hour later that I remembered what had happened the night before. And I started panicking, and I started doing what you would do, which is, do I have to say anything? This is like a bad eating dream. That's what my life was on this day of January 24th. Actually, this was January 25th. So I said, what the heck am I going to do? And I called my sponsor, and I said, I know I just called in my food, but I forgot to tell you something that happened at the restaurant last night. And she heard me, and she said, oh, wow. Well, well, what do you think? I said, I don't know. I mean, I was crying because I was so relieved to have told her the truth. That's what nobody tells us when we're in the middle of all the craziness that goes on with abstinence and trying to get abstinent, is that learning how to be rigorously honest with our food gives us the kind of peace of mind that you miss when you don't have it. And all I had to do to lose it was to make it my own decision about something that I knew I was in over my head, and I knew that. So I called my sponsor. She said, what do you think? I don't know. And she said, let's both hang up the phone and pray about it. Call me back and we'll talk about it. And when I called her back, she said, Eileen, I just have one question for you. What would you do if this were a sponsee of yours? Because she knew I had almost 20 years. And I said, I don't know what I would do if it was a sponsee of mine, but I know I should have made a phone call. I know I should have made the phone call. And she said, that's what I'm thinking too. So we started right away. I didn't skip a beat in terms of, I didn't go out and eat a bunch of shit. I didn't go out and eat a bunch of stuff. I didn't say, oh, this is impossible. Abstinence is impossible. It wasn't impossible. There was a solution to my problem. Thank you, Michelle. And I could have done it, and I didn't do it. So I'm here to say that from that day to this, I have been abstinent. And the neat thing is, what I realized was that I needed more in my program. I needed to have more connection. I needed to be in more contact with people. I needed people to call so that it wouldn't be so hard to pick up the phone. I needed to do service to feel more a part of this community. I had moved to Taos, New Mexico, and all of a sudden I was in a remote area, and I just have one. Anyway, it's changed in the last 4 years. My life has changed for the better in so many ways. I have much more solid abstinence. I'm active. I'm going to the conference in September, and I have made good, solid friends in Grey Sheet that I cannot live without, and I don't want to live without. And abstinence is the most important thing in the world. Thank you, Michelle. And yeah, that's it. Thank you.